set the stage on the Kevin Warsh nomination, and then go into kind of why you picked this quote from Pat Riley.
All right, awesome. We'll try to cross borders here into two different territories. All right, so yesterday was the first FOMC meeting of a new era, the Kevin Warsh era. Just to set the backdrop, this is only the fifth Fed chair in my lifetime, and I'm 40 years old, like just about to turn 40. So this likely represents the beginning of a new transitionary era that we can expect to play out over several years. And so yesterday was just that first dipping our toes into this new world. Um, so for anyone watching this with a mental framing and context of the Fed that we've come to know and gotten used to over the what we call the prior 40 years, the Greenspan, Bernanke, Yellen, that type of era, it'll be kind of hard to see what's happening. But hopefully, I'll give you some color on how I interpreted yesterday's conference, and then hopefully that can help you play the puck to where it's headed as opposed to where it was. All right, so this analogy just popped into my head as as I'm watching this, as I was processing, the dialogue of the press conference. Um, the way I kind of thought about this was you've got a new coach entering the locker room of an old team or organization that used to be good. They used to be winning, but they've fallen into complacency, fallen on hard ways, and that culture of I guess explanations to explain away failure or defeat, as Pat Riley gets at in the quote. The mindset has shifted, and it's just turned into more innovative thinking about coming up with explanations for why it's not failing or why we should, I don't know, give it time, whatever. And there's less thought about going back to first principles and culture, and adaptations that got it to be winning in the first place. So thinking about this as something that's going to, like, a transition that's going to play over multiple years. The coach is in the locker room. He sees where this thing is going and where he's going to organize this thing. The players are all the same. There hasn't been that process of roster turnover. So if you think about the 11 of the other 12 board members of the FOMC, and then the board of governors that make it up, those players are all the same as they were in the past. Some of those players will fit the new kind of vision of where the team is going. So you think about like Mickey Bowman, very, very clearly, currently the head of banking regulation in the United States on the FOMC board. She seems completely aligned with where the future is. So you've got a few who will just naturally adapt into change, but others, there's going to be replacement and churn here, and they're not fit for where the organization is going. So that's kind of how I viewed the dialogue. We'll go into the meat of what Warsh gave us yesterday, but think about, there's all these different stakeholders. You've got the board members themselves, and Kevin Warsh was just kind of recapping, giving us a little bit of insight into what the committee discussed. He said there was only one proposal on the table. I don't think it was crystal clear exactly what it is. He didn't spell it out explicitly for us, but my take is it probably had something to do with. You can go to the first quote, Cameron. He points out explicitly that the Fed has been failing at its objective for now over 5 years. That's been going on for more than 5 years. This is the coach talking to the locker room and saying, you guys are failing. Like, you're losing. It's time for institutional change.
Yeah.
And there was unanimous kind of agreement around this one proposal. Yeah, obviously we need to get back to that core objective that Congress has legislated the Fed to go out and accomplish. So right now, everybody, you take the ground you can, as a leader going into, a new organization as kind of an outsider looking to change things. You don't just, shake things up, on day one. You gradually bring bring the organization along to the future that you see as where this thing is going. So that's what I took away from the beginning. But you've got different stakeholders. So I talked about the board members, the FOMC. You've also got the media themselves, right? And you can see this in the press conference. We'll get into the bullet about forward guidance here in a second. But Kevin Warsh was very specific in pushback. He made it clear he was not going to give like carrots or sticks to the media writers who ask questions to try to get some nuggets and think about, oh, what does the Fed think about rates, and then we're going to position the market around what the Fed thinks about what it thinks it's going to do about rates. Kevin Warsh is like, no, throw that whole playbook away. We're going to get market participants responding to market information, not we're not going
Yeah.
to be in the business of market participants and the financial media writers just feeding into this mindset where everything is all about what is the Fed going to do with interest rates, and you see it in financial headlines. Just pull up Yahoo Finance any day over the last 10, 15, 20 years, whatever. It's always like markets did this today. That means Fed is like Fed because Fed was doing this or said this. And Warsh is basically like, yeah, that whole thing, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's all going away.
What do you mean?
So
What do you think they meant with this wording choice and things? It's just, yeah.
yeah, yeah. What did the color of his tie mean today?
All right.
Things like that. It's like that's gone. All right. So key here, we talk like he was very explicit here that this forward guidance monetary policy kind of framing or toolkit that's going out the door. So for just definitions, laying it down, this is coming from the Federal Reserve's website itself. What is forward guidance? Basically it's a tool. Like what it really amounts to is the Wizard of Oz. The man behind the curtain is kind of this framework. If we as the Fed board members go out and we just talk up or down interest rates or talk up or down markets, whatever, we can use that policy kind of language to guide markets where we want them, and the markets will react to that, and that will materialize the course we want monetary policy to take towards that road. Um, Really, this isn't something that's been going on. Like the Fed is an over 100-year-old institution, like started in 1913. This is a relatively new framework. So this really starts in the early 2000s, like coming out of the dot-com bubble. It was kind of a Greenspan framework, and then really took hold with Bernanke. And it's been continued under the Yellen and then Powell eras of the Fed. Um, but it was very clear if you go to Warsh's side, Warsh said this forward guidance that's out the door. He said the committee all agreed this was not well suited towards the current policy kind of framework where monetary policy and the Fed is going in this era. Cameron, if you go to the next one, he mentions it again here. He gets asked on it a couple times, and he pushed back.
Keeps
And some
pushing
answers
back, yeah.
like, sounds like you're asking me for forward guidance, and I'm already made it clear. Yeah, we're not doing that. And he said it a couple more times, and I think very slowly these financial writers are just slowly kind of digesting. It's like, oh, we're gonna have to start doing a totally different job here,
Yeah.
and you can
Yep.
almost just like see them processing it in real time. So yeah, he said like forward guidance isn't the business we should be in. That's out the door. Now the opposite of forward guidance and this kind of like Wizard of Oz policy, as I described it, there's an other end of the spectrum of central banking policy. It's called window guidance, but what it really is the Fed, instead of publicly talking up or down interest rates or monetary policy, um, window guidance, it's been used in a few examples in history. We'll get into those on other episodes. But window guidance is it's more of an explicit framework where instead of like fuzzy language and just trying to usher in markets, the participants to do what you want them to do, window guidance is the opposite, where the central bank specifically allocates credit, and credit is rationed. It's always going to be rationed. There's always going to be more demand for borrowing than the supply of balance sheet capacity in a banking system or real resources in the economy. But window guidance is this framework. It's been used in Japan prior to the QE era, the post Nikkei bubble collapse of 1990. Right, it was the old framework from like basically like industrial empire Japan pre World War II, and then through all the way up until the Nikkei bubble collapsed in the 90s. But what it is the central bank like apportions out credit target allocation targets to its banking sector, and the banks themselves are responsible for deploying credit into the specific projects and initiatives that your government, your public sector, policymakers, all of that they want done. So that's how you get deployment into the real economy. So think about manufacturing, industry, energy infrastructure, home like residential mortgages, like actual real economic growth. You see Richard Warner in his book Princes of the Yen. He calls this like the secret of monetary policy, actually unlocking rapid and fast economic growth through your banking system and
Making
the
sure
credit
it goes to
system.
productive actual
Yeah.
output. Okay.
So I want to be clear here. Warsh didn't say we're moving from forward guidance to window guidance. So that's not explicit yet, right?
Right.
You can
Right.
kind of see where this is going. But he said forward guidance. It's like, yeah, we're done. We're out of that business. So that one is crystal clear. All right. Any questions on it? Yeah, but and then the last thing before we beat this horse to death. Yeah, the policy for forward guidance is that, or sorry, the track record for forward guidance as a policy is actually weak results at best. Like it doesn't work. If it had a good long run track record, it actually resulted in real economic growth, we wouldn't be here where we are today, right? It's kind of that
Sure.
coach showing up in the locker room. It's like, guys, if you were still winning and still organizationally capable, you had a culture of winning, I wouldn't be here.
Right. Right.
So this was a big press conference, and yeah, it was just the first step of a leader implementing organizational change, which is going to take several months, quarters, even years, like for this story to fully play out. But I think it was pretty crystal clear what we saw yesterday. That process has begun. So
Yep.
the most concrete, what do you call it? Like just thing that we have for forward guidance, besides just like loose language and mumbo jumbo, sending out your Fed speakers on a circuit, and everybody, the media just worships, adores them, hangs on every word. The most explicit product we have for that is this dot plots, or the Fed dots. And this was a Bernanke era kind of project. I think it started like 2012 or roughly then. And basically what they started doing is every Fed meeting, every FOMC, you'd have the 12 board members publish their expectations for short-term interest rates for, right now, 1 year out, 2 years out, and then longer term, whatever that means. And this was just something that, the media, everybody, portfolio managers, the dots, you see the dots. It's all fugazi. Like they never actually like mapped to what actually happened in money markets.
Right.
But what it was like the explicit thing for this, Ben Bernanke school of monetary policy, the forward guidance. This was literally supposed to be it. It's like, if we just show everybody where these 12 people think interest rates are going, then the portfolio managers, the pension funds, the hedge funds, they'll all go like organize around that. Lemmings,
It'll magically happen because we
it'll
spoke it
just,
into
yeah,
existence. Yeah.
exactamundo. Yeah. And so what Kevin Moore said in this meeting, this is actually like very adept. Like if you think about the coach walking into the locker room, and you want buy-in, right? You want to see like which players are going to buy into your message, and then who is going to be like resistant and like potentially in worst case a cultural cancer, right? Those are the players who, they get cut, traded, contracts not renewed. And there's going to be some of those here on the FOMC as we continue to watch this story play out. But notice Kevin Warsh did something extremely politically adept, right? He goes into this meeting as chair, he puts one proposal on the table, And then he doesn't put forward strict, edicts or like management by, rulemaking. Instead, he says, listen, you all are free to pencil in your dots and fill in these numbers, but I'm not going to do it because I don't think it's appropriate and it's not aligned with the direction of the Fed as Kevin Warsh kind of envisions under his leadership and what this institution is transitioning into. So I think 11 of the 12, they still kept doing this. But what he's telling you as his leader, he's like, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. Right. And so gradually, then suddenly, right, this behavior becomes ingrained. And then, something that was, aligned with the losing culture, the players who last, they're going to stop doing it. And then eventually what happens, it's like, well, next meeting, Mickey Bowman doesn't submit the dot. And then that meeting after that, one or two more people don't. And eventually it just turns out we have 6 dots, half of them doing it, half not. It's like you killed it by default, right? So
Right.
you're
Yeah.
slowly, getting rid of these old behaviors and old ways without making it like something that the legacy employees or the board members you inherited like have something to go at you for and directly sabotage this change you're trying to implement.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
And then last, um, what he did is he mentioned that he's launching 5 task forces covering subjects. Number 1 is inflation, 2 is communication, 3 is economic data, 4 is productivity, aka the AI build out and the implementation of this technology in the U.S. economy, and then number 5 is jobs. So as a new leader coming in, instead of just trying to go cold turkey, say we're doing this now, and then running into organizational resistance. Instead, what you do is your first move is, oh, we all agree we need to hit this. This is our one proposal on the table. We're going to meet our core inflation objective of 2% CPI, stability. Um, Nobody on the committee can disagree with that, right? It's in the congressional mandate. But what you do is instead of, just trying to force these changes through onto an organization where you're going to encounter inertia and resistance, you go at it and you say, all right, now we need these task forces and we're going to make it up of, individual committees on, each one of these projects. And hey, some of them will be Republicans, some of them will be Democrats, but the result up front. It's like not perfectly, but directionally, all of the findings from these task forces are going to come out with a report it's ultimately going to foot back to on these subjects what was going on before in this era of failure and losing, and then what are the recommendations to implement for getting back to success, winning, accomplishing those objectives. So those reports, those will deliver the ammunition, the organizational buy-in, all of that to then move this kind of monolithic, slow-moving institution and pull it into the future, right? So it's going to be a big process. This will probably play out over the rest of 2026, but that's what I read as the key takeaway from this press conference. It was just
Yeah.
new leader on board. Changes are coming. That was obvious. And he is not going to do things in a way that, I guess if you think about it, some coaches get chewed up by the existing kind of staff, teammates, et cetera. This is not going to be an environment where that's going to be allowed to happen. Okay, so now we go into the market reaction. And the first take on all of this was the bond market sold off, right? What it really was it was concentrated at the front end of the U.S. Treasury yield curve. It was a big move, like almost 15 basis points rise in yields on the day. I've got the 2-year chart posted here. I want to interpret something because the way I think a lot of us framed this, and your understanding, if you're thinking about this Fed and that old world we're coming out of, what you saw was, oh, Fed's going to hike here. He's a hawk. He's going to hike rates to squeeze out inflation to bring back CPI down to that 2% target. All that kind of true, but you're missing you're missing the importance of what's going on. So yes, 2-year yields did rise here, but the interpretation here, I think, is what's important and not being fully baked in. So the other line here, besides the white, which is the 2-year, and you can very clearly see the 2-year yield trending up. The red line is your break-even CPI inflation rate, and this is based on the TIPS market. So this is primarily a retail, investment product. But what you're looking for here, if you're a saver and you're storing your purchasing power in these currency IOUs, you can index in the TIPS market to CPI inflation. And basically, if you take the TIPS bond and then the nominal bond and you subtract out the difference, you can get the expectations, from this market of future CPI inflation, right? And what we've seen since April, when post that Hormuz spike, and oil markets, energy markets started to roll over and digest what was actually going to happen. Um, what we've actually seen here, nominal yields up, break even inflation down. What this is actually telling you is there's an expectation from fixed income markets that these yield rises are actually coming from uh, increased expectations of real economic growth in the US economy. So you see this. So think about the old world prior to the rate hikes of 2022. If you see the left hand of this chart, you saw TIPS break even CPI well above nominal yield. What that
Yeah.
actually is that's a world where the bondholder gets soaked, right? Ultimately, like this is the mindset everybody's framing. You hear people talk about this, like um, whatever. They're just gonna engage in financial repression, debase the money. Nothing stops this train. Public debt is just gonna keep going up exponentially. Notice we've had like the bond market has actually been saying since the rate hikes of 2022. Give Powell credit for this. Um, that we're actually going down a different path. And the US going down this path has actually forced the hands of everybody else in the world, all the other global money centers, sovereign, debt markets, sovereign currencies, to come along and respond to the US as a leader as opposed to a follower, going along with everybody else's, financial schemes, globalist schemes, all of that. All right. So what this is saying, the market is saying, the interpretation from Friday's meeting wasn't, hawkishness or, oh, he's going to squeeze inflation or he's going to squeeze out inflation, all of that. He says, no, what the actual interpretation here, like abandoning forward guidance, that framework we thought was going to happen in 2020, 2021, the financial repression, the debasement of the dollar, we're going to rinse the currency, all of that. It's saying there's a different model here, and what it's expecting is actual US economic, like real growth is what this is amounting
Right.
to. And then if you take, it takes a logical leap to see it, but the framework of monetary policy is it's away from that forward guidance world, QE world, ZERP world, all of that. And it's tilting over. It hasn't been made explicit yet, but that window guidance world where the banking system is tasked with funding and allocating credit to that real domestic economic growth. That's we're seeing early confirmations that fixed income markets and currency markets are buying into that. All right,
Sure.
Cameron, was there one more on this? Okay, so yeah, and then the last thing, we don't want to talk about this too much, but if you think about the old world bond market bubble, or we call it the great bond bull market of 1980 to call it 2022, you saw this scheme where you had the Fed put always at your back. The euro dollar credit expansion, was going to be perpetuated, one way or the other. In that world, you you really saw, financiers, hedge funds, et cetera. What they were doing was they would borrow at lower and lower interest rates and buy financial assets, and you'd have these carry schemes, results in all these, things that, most of the world doesn't like, wealth inequalities, all of that. My point here, if you were looking for signs in a world that that old way of financial asset inflation, um, monetary policy built around carry trades, et cetera, on you know, borrow to fund just pure financial asset speculation. If that was going away, what are some things you would look to see? It's like, well, those carry trades would unwind. That if you're built for that prior 40 years, those strategies would struggle in this new environment. And if you're looking at the most edge of the frontier of tip of the spear for those strategies, look at the perpetual preferreds that have proliferated in the last like 15 months or so in the Bitcoin and credit space. That's all I'll say on that matter for now.
Sure.
To continue, or a story we'll continue to watch and monitor, but it plays into that big picture monetary transition within the dollar system that we've been talking about on this show for quite some time.